Never go to the vineyard, Eleanor. Promise me. Those words, spoken with a quiet intensity that was unlike my husband Daniel, echoed in my mind as I sat in the stark silence of our suburban Ohio home. He'd made me swear this over 30 years of marriage, his voice laced with a pain I never understood. I'd honored that promise, even as the mystery of his childhood in the Napa Valley lingered in the background of our life together. A shadow he rarely acknowledged, but now Daniel was gone. A sudden aneurysm, the doctor said. Quick, painless, a small mercy that felt like a colossal injustice. At 60 years old, I was a widow. The life we'd built him, as a respected architect, me, as a librarian, felt like a diorama I was observing from the outside. Our daughter, Sophia, just 30, was a whirlwind of anger and grief, and the hollow space in my chest where my future used to be seemed to grow larger every day. Mrs. Eleanor Reed, the voice of Daniel's attorney, Mr. Henderson, pulled me from my thoughts. We were in his modern, impersonal office 3 weeks after the funeral. Death had been reduced to a checklist of forms and signatures. There's one final matter, he said, his tone shifting. He slid a small, polished wooden box across his desk. Your husband left this for you, with strict instructions that it only be delivered after his passing. Inside, nestled on velvet, was an old, tarnished silver key on a keychain shaped like a cluster of grapes that held 2 keys. Beneath it lay a sealed envelope with my name written in Daniel's elegant, architectural script. My heart stammered. What is this? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Your husband purchased a property in Sonoma County, California, 4 years ago, Mr. Henderson explained, adjusting his tie. A vineyard called Belly. According to his will, the deed has been transferred solely to your name. All taxes are prepaid for the next decade. A property in California. Daniel hadn't owned anything beyond our home, Belly. The name felt foreign on my tongue. It was his family's land, though it changed hands several times before he reacquired it. The lawyer continued. The vineyard, the place he'd forbidden me to ever see. The mere mention of it could darken his gentle eyes for days. Mrs. Reed, Mr. Henderson lowered his voice. You should know, the property has appreciated significantly. We've already received unsolicited offers. Appreciated. It's a vineyard, yes. But about 2 years ago, a university soil study revealed the land possesses a unique terroir, exceptionally suited for a rare, ancient grape varietal. Wines produced from it could be worth thousands per bottle. Your husband declined all purchase and partnership offers. My head spun. Daniel never mentioned any of this. We lived comfortably, but we were careful. How had he afforded a vineyard? He used a private investment from a successful architectural project, one he'd kept discreet even from me. And why this immense, beautiful secret? With trembling fingers, I broke the seal on the envelope. My dearest Ellie, if you're reading this, then I've left you too soon. For that, I am so sorry. There is so much I should have told you, but the words always failed me. Bellitor is yours now. I've spent these last years transforming it from the sorrowful place of my memory into something beautiful, something worthy of you. I know I made you promise never to go there. I release you from that promise. In fact, I beg you to go, just once, before you decide its fate. On the desk in the main house, you'll find a laptop. The password is the date we met, June 12, 1987, followed by Carter. I love you, my Ellie, more than all the stars. Always, Daniel. I clutched the letter to my chest, tears blurring the careful script. Even in death, he was rewriting my world. I need to see it, I said, my voice firmer than I expected. Of course, Mr. Henderson nodded, but I must warn you, Daniel's family has contested the will. His brothers, Richard, Michael, and Thomas, claim he was not of sound mind when he repurchased the property. That's absurd, I snapped. Daniel was the most lucid person I've ever known. Nevertheless, they've filed legal objections. Given the property's new valuation, this could become contentious. I tucked the key into my purse, a strange, solid weight against my hip. I'm going to California, Mr. Henderson, today. That afternoon, I booked a flight to San Francisco and arranged a rental car to drive to Sonoma. 48 hours later, after a flurry of hastily booked flights and a drive through the rolling golden hills of Sonoma, I stood before ornate iron gates. The sign arched above, wrought in metal, Bellet. Beyond, the property unfolded like a dream. It wasn't a simple vineyard. It was an estate. Neat rows of vines cascaded down slopes, leading to a stunning, Mediterranean-style villa with a terracotta roof and a wide, welcoming veranda. Everything was immaculate, freshly painted, and lush. This was no abandoned family plot. This was a paradise. The silver key turned smoothly in the lock of the gate. As I drove up the winding olive tree-lined driveway, my heart hammered against my ribs. What part of himself had Daniel hidden here all these years? The villa was even more breathtaking up close. My hands shook as I inserted the second key from the grape-shaped keychain into the heavy wooden front door. The lock clicked, the door swung inward, and I stepped across the threshold into my husband's secret world. The air was scented with lemon and rosemary. The entryway opened into a vast, sun-drenched great room with exposed wooden beams and a massive stone fireplace. But it wasn't the architecture that stole my breath. It was the books. Floor-to-ceiling shelves covered every wall, filled with beautiful, leather-bound volumes. First editions, my lifelong obsession, the one passion Daniel had always indulged but never fully shared. In the center of the room, a custom-built glass case displayed a complete, pristine set of Jane Austen first editions, something I'd only ever dreamed of seeing. It was a library dedicated to my greatest love. And there, on a rustic desk by a window overlooking the vineyards, sat a sleek laptop, a single, perfect white orchid resting upon its closed lid. Before I could take another step, the crunch of tires on gravel announced I wasn't alone. Through the window, I watched a dark BMW pull up behind my rental car. 3 men emerged, all bearing the unmistakable Reed family trait stole, broad-shouldered, with the same sharp jawline Daniel had possessed. The Reed brothers had arrived, and their grim expressions told me this wasn't a welcoming committee. They approached the villa with an entitled stride that made my skin prickle. I quickly closed and locked the door, my pulse racing. Through the sidelight, I saw them conferring on the veranda before the oldest, Richard, a silver-haired version of Daniel with cold, flinty eyes, rapped sharply on the wood. "Eleanor, we know you're in there. We need to talk." His voice lacked the warmth Daniel's had always carried. I remained silent, backing away. Daniel's vague but vehement warnings about his family screamed in my mind. The knocking grew more insistent. "Eleanor, I'm Richard, Daniel's older brother. These are Michael and Thomas. We're here about Bellictor." Of course they were. Not to offer condolences, not to meet the woman their brother had loved for 3 decades. They were here for the valuable property. My eyes darted to the laptop. The answers were there, not with these strangers. Ignoring the pounding, I moved to the desk, opened the computer, and entered the password, June 12, 1987, followed by Carter, my maiden name. The screen bloomed to life, opening to a folder labeled for my Ellie. Inside were hundreds of video files, dated from the day after his funeral, stretching a full year into the future. With a trembling hand, I clicked the first one. Daniel's face filled the screen. Not the pale, tired man from his final months, but the vibrant, healthy husband I remembered, his smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. "Hello, my Ellie. If you're watching this, then I'm gone, and you've come to Bell. Despite my years of making you promise not to." He chuckled softly, and the sound was a physical ache. "I should have known you wouldn't be able to resist, especially after Henderson told you about it." A sob caught in my throat. He knew me so well. "I've made a video for every day of your first year without me," he continued, his expression softening. "1 year of me keeping you company. 1 year of explaining everything I should have told you while I was alive." He looked directly into the camera, his gaze intense. "Starting with why I bought back the vineyard I swore I'd never see again." The knocking outside had stopped. Through the window, I saw the brothers retreating to their car, retrieving documents, their expressions frustrated. 3 years ago, Daniel's voice drew me back. I was diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. The doctors gave me 3 to 5 years. I chose not to tell you or Sophia. I didn't want pity, or to have our final years become a countdown. I wanted to live fully with you until the very end, not fade away in front of you. The doctors later said the stress of the ALS on his nervous system could have precipitated the aneurysm. Shock and a hot, sharp anger surged through me. He'd hidden this. He'd made such a monumental decision alone, robbing me of the chance to cherish our time, to prepare. "I know you're angry, Ellie," he said, as if reading my mind. "You have every right to be, but I hope you'll understand it came from a place of love, not deception." Outside, the brothers were on their phones, pacing with the energy of men whose plans had been thwarted. "When I got my diagnosis," Daniel went on, "I decided to use whatever time I had to build something meaningful for you. You always loved literature, always dreamed of a quiet place surrounded by books, of cultivating something beautiful. So, I went back to the last place anyone would expect, The Vineyard I'd fled at 18. What my brothers don't know is that I legally bought Bellitor from our father before he died. The old man was drowning in debt and secrets. He sold it to me for a fraction of its value, desperate for cash, and made me swear to keep it from my brothers, who still believed they'd inherit it. The legal challenge now made sense. They thought it was theirs. The place was in ruins, Ellie. Just like when I was a boy. But this time, I had the resources to rebuild it. Every business trip these last few years, I was here, overseeing every detail, creating this for you. The brothers were at the door again. This time, Richard held a document up to the window, a court order. My brothers will come for it, Daniel said, his face hardening. They never wanted it until the university's soil report was leaked. Suddenly, the worthless land they'd mocked me for buying was a goldmine. They'll try everything to take it from you. In the video, he leaned forward. In the bottom drawer of this desk is a red folder with every legal document you need. Bellitor is unquestionably yours. I made sure of it. His expression softened. But Ellie, whether you keep it or sell it is your choice. I built this for you, filled it with your dreams, but I don't want it to be a burden. One last thing, he added, a smile touching his lips. In the library, the third shelf from the left, behind Pride and Prejudice, there's a switch. The whole wall opens up. It's my final gift to you. The video ended, freezing on his smiling face, as a new, more authoritative knocking began. Mrs. Reed, Sonoma County Sheriff's Department. Please open the door. I took a deep breath, closed the laptop, and retrieved the red folder from the drawer. As I reached for the door handle, my phone rang. Sophia. Mom, now's not a good time. I answered quickly. Mom, her voice was tight, laced with hurt and confusion. Why didn't you tell me about Dad's vineyard, or the grape varietal? His brothers called me. They're offering a settlement if I help them contest the will. What is going on? They'd gotten to my daughter. The realization ignited a fierce, protective fire within me. This wasn't just about me anymore. I'll explain everything later, sweetheart. But don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. These men are not our friends. Mom, if there's this much money involved, this isn't about money. I interrupted, surprising myself with my own conviction. This is about what your father wanted. Please, trust me. After a tense silence, she sighed. Fine, but call me as soon as you can. I hung up and opened the door to face a young sheriff's deputy flanked by the three Reed brothers, their faces a mixture of smugness and hostility. Mrs. Reed, I'm Deputy Miller. These gentlemen have a court order for a property inspection related to an estate dispute. I channeled a calm I didn't feel, the strength Daniel had always seen in me. Of course, Deputy, but first, I think you should see these. I held out the red folder. My husband anticipated this. Richard stepped forward with a dismissive wave. Estate disputes are complex. Deputy, my sister-in-law is emotional and likely confused. Actually, I interjected smoothly, I am neither emotional nor confused. I am a widow standing on property that legally belongs to me, facing three strangers who share my late husband's DNA. I turned to the deputy. I'd appreciate it if you'd review these documents before allowing anyone onto my property. The deputy took the folder, his expression neutral as he read. The brothers' confidence wavered visibly. The deputy looked up. These appeared to be in order, Mrs. Reed. A clear deed transfer, notarized statements, certified financial records of the purchase. The brothers' court order was a preliminary motion, lacking legal weight, without further review. Gentlemen, I don't see grounds for an inspection today. This is a matter for civil court. Richard's face flushed. This is outrageous. That woman has no right. That woman, I said calmly, is Daniel Reed's wife, and I have every right to be here. As they reluctantly retreated, followed by the deputy, I felt a strange mix of loss and discovery. The man I loved had kept profound secrets, but they were woven from love. I closed the door, my hand resting on the wood. The war for Bellitor had just begun, and I was now a general in an army of one. But was I alone? I walked to the bookshelf, found the Jane Austen volume, and felt behind it. My fingers found a small, hidden switch. I pressed it, and a section of the bookcase, shelves and all, swung inward without a sound, revealing a hidden room. What else had Daniel left for me? And could I possibly be strong enough to defend it all? I spent that first night in Daniel's Noir villa, surrounded by the scent of old books and lemon polish. Sleep was a fleeting visitor. At dawn, I explored the hidden room. It was a climate-controlled archival space, filled with my own writings, poetry, short stories, half-finished novels from college. Pieces I thought were lost to time. He hadn't just built me a library. He had preserved the writer I had once aspired to be, before life and practicality had led me to become a curator of other people's stories, instead of telling my own. A gentle knock on the villa's front door pulled me from the past. I found a woman in her 60s, with kind eyes and hands etched with the marks of a life working the land. "Mrs. Reed, I'm Maria. Your husband hired me to manage the vineyards." She smiled. "He spoke of you constantly, said you had a way with words that he could only dream of." "You knew Daniel well?" I asked, inviting her in. "As well as he allowed," she said, her gaze taking in the library with appreciation. "He was here every month for the past few years, obsessed with every detail. These last 6 months, he worked like a man possessed, as if he was racing a clock only he could see." The confirmation of his secret illness was a fresh wound. I'd attributed his fatigue and increased travel to work stress. I never imagined he was here, dying, while building me a sanctuary. "His brothers were here yesterday," I ventured. Maria's expression darkened. "The vultures. They've been circling since that soil report went public. They hadn't set foot here in 20 years until they smelled money." She told me what Daniel never had, about a childhood of neglect, of brothers who tormented him for staying behind to care for a bitter father, of their mockery when he bought the useless land back. "They'll be back," I said, more to myself. "Count on it." Maria nodded, but Mr. Reed prepared. He was always several steps ahead. Back in the great room, I opened the laptop for the next video. Daniel appeared, seated in the very library I was in. "Good morning, Ellie. I hope you found the archive. Today, I want to show you the heart of Belitor." The camera moved as he carried it outside, down a path lined with lavender, to a beautiful, modern greenhouse I hadn't noticed yet. "This is where the real magic happens." The video showed rows of delicate, ancient grapevines, their leaves a distinctive shape. "This is the Vitaceus anguis varietal, an ancient, nearly extinct varietal. It was thought to be extinct. I found a single cutting in an abandoned monastery garden in Italy, and spent a fortune and 3 years coaxing it back to life. The wine it produces, it's why the offers are so high. But it's fragile. It needs a specific touch." He looked directly into the camera. "My brothers will try to use Sophia. They'll offer her a connection to me, to a family she never knew. Grief makes us vulnerable, Ellie. You need to get to her first." As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. "I'm coming up. Uncle Richard is giving me a ride. We need to talk." My blood ran cold. They had already begun their work. I watched from the window as Sophia's car pulled up. She emerged, my beautiful, headstrong daughter, with Daniel's dark hair and my stubborn chin. She was smiling, shaking hands with Richard as if they were old friends. The fragile piece I'd found shattered. They entered without knocking, Sophia leading the way. "Mom, this place is incredible," she said, her eyes wide as she took in the library. "Why would Dad keep this from us?" Before I could answer, Richard stepped forward, his conciliatory mask firmly in place. "Eleanor, we got off on the wrong foot. We were all surprised. We're here to make amends." Michael, the middle brother, a lawyer, clutched his leather portfolio. "We've prepared a new proposal, a fair division. 1/3 to you, 1/3 to Sophia, 1/3 to us. Everyone benefits." Sophia looked at me, her expression pleading. "It makes sense, Mom. We don't need this huge place. We could sell, be set for life, and keep the family peace." "Your father left this to me," I said, meeting Richard's gaze. Out of confusion, Richard countered smoothly. "The illness, it affected his judgment." "My husband was perfectly sound of mind," I said, my voice sharp. "Then, why the secrecy?" Thomas, the quietest brother, spoke. "Why hide it from his own wife and daughter?" "Mom," Sophia said, her voice softer now, "I know this is hard, but this proposal is rational. It was happening exactly as Daniel had predicted. They were dividing us. I will review any written proposal with my attorney," I stated, "but I will not be pressured in my own home." Richard's mask slipped. "This property is worth over $50 million with the rights to that grape. We can do this the easy way, or we can make it very difficult for you. You're a retired librarian from Ohio facing a legal battle with us." I thought of the red folder, the videos, the hidden archive. I believe my husband knew exactly what he was doing. "Now, please leave." Sophia looked torn. "I'm going with them for now. Think about the offer, Mom. Please." I watched them go, a hollow ache in my chest. Maria appeared at my side. "Mrs. Reed, there's more you should know." Something Daniel asked me to show you only if things turned dire. With Sophia swayed by the brothers' influence, the situation had become critical. She led me to the greenhouse. In the back, behind a false wall of tools, was another keypad. Maria entered a code. The date. We matanned. A section of the floor slid aside, revealing stairs. He called this his insurance policy, she said. We descended into a concrete-walled bunker. It was a war room. One wall was covered with maps of the property, highlighting the specific plots where the Vitasea sanguis grew best. Plots the brothers had conveniently excluded from their proposed division. Another wall was lined with filing cabinets. He documented everything, Maria explained, opening a drawer, their business dealings, tax fraud, illegal land deals, embezzlement from their own companies, enough to send them all to prison. I leafed through the files, my hands trembling. Daniel's thoroughness was breathtaking. He had built me a fortress of information. He knew they'd come, I whispered. He did, but I don't think he expected them to sway Sophia so quickly. I knew what I had to do. Maria, I need your help. First, I need to talk to Sophia, alone. Then, I need to meet with the winery that's been most persistent in their offers. Which one? She asked. The one that values sustainability and legacy over quick profit. A plan began to form in my mind. Daniel had given me the weapons. It was time to learn how to use them. I met Sophia at a quiet cafe in Sonoma, away from the influence of her uncles. She arrived, defensive, arms crossed. I can't stay long. I'm meeting Uncle Richard and their attorney. Uncle Richard, I repeated gently. You've known him for 3 days. They've been kind, she insisted. They're offering me a connection to Dad's family, to his history. Do you remember, I began, when you took that philosophy class in college, and you were so taken with the idea of perceived reality? What does that have to do with anything? You're only seeing their perspective. I'm asking you to consider your father's. I pulled out my tablet. He left something for you, too. I played the video Daniel had labeled for Sophia. His face appeared, and she gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Hello, my brilliant girl, he began, his voice warm. If you're watching this, I'm gone, and you're probably furious with me for all the secrets. He smiled his crooked smile. I should have told you I was sick. I was selfish. I wanted our time to be normal. His expression grew serious. But you need to know about my brothers. Our estrangement wasn't a simple disagreement. When I was 19, they forged my name on documents, embezzled my inheritance from our grandfather. And when I threatened to expose them, they said they'd drag me down with them. I left, changed my name from Daniel Reed to Daniel Carter, built a new life, met your mother, had you. It was more than enough. But they never changed. Whatever they're offering you, remember, they see you as a tool, Sophia, not as family. The video ended. Sophia was crying silent tears. He was protecting us, she whispered. Double quotes. Yes. And they haven't been entirely honest with you about the vineyard's value. I showed her the maps from the bunker, pointing to the excluded plots. The most valuable part of the land isn't what they're offering to share. They're trying to cheat us. Understanding dawned in her eyes, followed by anger. They played me. Grief makes us vulnerable. But now, we need to be smarter. Together. She straightened, wiping her tears, her expression shifting to one of fierce determination. What's the plan, Mom? First, we meet with my attorney. Then, we have a meeting with Cara Dolce Winery. The CEO is a woman who believes in ethical viticulture. Why? Because knowledge is power, and right now, we hold all the cards. For the first time since Daniel's death, Sophia smiled. Dad always said you were the smartest person he knew, that people underestimated you at their peril. Did he now? I felt a flicker of pride, all the time. As we left the cafe united, I felt the tide turning. The Reed brothers had no idea what was coming. The brothers arrived at Bellitor, exactly on time. 3 days later, their BMW rolling up the driveway with an air of inevitability. I watched from the great room, dressed in a new, tailored pantsuit. Sophia stood beside me, wearing a simple, elegant dress and her father's watch. Ready? She asked. Completely, I said, squeezing her hand. Maria showed them in. Richard, Michael, and Thomas entered, followed by a man in an expensive suit I recognized from business magazines, the CEO of a large, corporate winery. Eleanor, Richard began, his smile oily. This is Mr. Davis of Global Vin. We thought his expertise would be helpful. How thoughtful, I said pleasantly. I've prepared the dining room. I led them to the formal dining room, where a large table was set with documents. I remained standing at the head of the table. Before we begin, I said, I want to thank you for your proposal. It was very illuminating. I picked up a remote and pressed a button. A screen descended, displaying a detailed map of Belly. This is the complete property, all 200 acres, not just the 80 acres you included in your division. They excluded the 120 acres with the richest soil for the Vitaceous unguis. Michael shifted. The rest is rocky, unsuitable terrain. Is it? I clicked the remote again. The map overlaid with soil quality data and growth projections for the Vitaceous unguis, highlighting the worthless western plots. According to 3 independent agronomists, the primary growth potential for the valuable varietal is exactly there. Mr. Davis leaned forward, his professional interest piqued. These reports are speculative, Richard blustered. Actually, a new voice said from the connecting door. They've been verified by my team. The brothers turned in shock as Elena Rossi, the CEO of Terra Dolce Winery, entered the room, followed by my attorney. What is this? Richard demanded. This, I said calmly, is a meeting about the true future of Bellitor. Ms. Rossi has made a compelling offer based on the complete data my husband compiled. Mr. Davis shot a betrayed look at the brothers. You told me you had exclusive negotiating rights. They don't, my attorney stated firmly. Mrs. Reed holds clear title. Richard slammed his hand on the table. This is family land. Family land. Sophia spoke, her voice steady. Like the family obligation you had when you stole Dad's inheritance, or when you forged his signature. The brothers froze. Perhaps these will clarify, I said, nodding to my attorney, who distributed envelopes containing copies of Daniel's evidence. Michael scanned the contents, his face paling. These are private matters. They establish a pattern of fraud, I countered, which impacts your credibility here. What do you want? Richard asked, his facade crumbling. I want you to leave Bellitor and never return. Cease all legal actions and all contact with my daughter. In exchange, these documents remain private. Mr. Davis stood. I believe my company has been misled. Mrs. Reed, I'll be in touch directly. He left quickly. Richard glared at me. You have no idea the costs of cultivating that western section. Actually, Elena Rossi said, Terra Dolce specializes in challenging terrain. We're prepared to offer Mrs. Reed a partnership that respects the land and its legacy. The meeting continued for 2 hours, but the battle was won. The brothers, outmaneuvered and exposed, eventually agreed to the terms. They left, defeated. As their car disappeared, Maria appeared. He would be so proud of you, Eleanor. I looked at Sophia, at the beautiful home Daniel had built, at the future he had given me. We're not finished yet, I said softly. The months that followed were a whirlwind of legal finalities and planning with Terra Dolce. Sophia split her time between her life in San Francisco and Bellitor. Our relationship deeper than ever. We established a ritual of watching Daniel's videos together each morning. One evening, as we sat on the veranda watching the sun set over the vines, Sophia asked, Did you ever suspect any of it? I thought back, little things, his insistence on updating our wills, the way he'd look at us sometimes, as if memorizing our faces. I thought it was just getting older. He built you a library, she said, smiling. He gave you back your words. And in doing so, he had given me back myself. My partnership with Terra Dolce was unconventional. I insisted on organic, sustainable practices, and a foundation to support literacy programs in rural communities. Elena Rossi told me, Daniel said you'd insist on doing things right, not just profitably, another piece of his planning revealed. One morning, I stood in the hidden archive, a blank journal open on the desk. After decades, I began writing again. The words came slowly at first, then in a rush, stories of love, loss, and rediscovery. Sophia brought me the laptop. This one's different, Mom. It's for when you start writing again. Alone, I pressed play. Daniel appeared in the archive, when it was still empty. Hello, my love. If you're watching this, you've found your way back to your words. His eyes shone. This room isn't just for preservation. It's for creation. I've given you the space, the security, the freedom. What you do with it, that's your legacy, Ellie, not mine. The real inheritance isn't the vineyard or the books. It's the possibility of becoming who you were always meant to be. Tears streamed down my face. He had seen the writer in me long after I had forgotten her. I began writing my first novel. Set in a vineyard much like this one, the legacy of Bellitor was no longer about the land or the wine, but about the stories that grew here, and the strength I found to tell them, honoring the past, cherishing the present. I wrote my future. As I've shared my journey, I invite you to share yours. Your story matters. Share your own in the comments below. If my journey resonated with you, subscribe to the channel for more stories of love, loss, and finding your strength. I'll be here, waiting to share them with you.